Bank failures. Bank failures. Let's get to the money, y'all. Now we get into the unpopular part of the show, because this is the part that actually helps you, makes you better, gives you insight and understanding on how it is that you can leverage what's going on in these streets in order to become successful. First Republic Bank. News happened over last week or over the weekend that First Republic Bank is one of the second largest banks ever to collapse. It is now being swallowed up by JP Chase. And it is big, big news to everybody in the banking community. Make sure y'all hit a like for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. If you have not already, make sure you tap into the Patreon. The best day to tap into the Patreon is the beginning of the month. The first of the month is the best day to tap into the Patreon. I'm doing a webinar tomorrow on how it is that y'all can leverage this social media, and I'm going to be showing receipts. I'm going to be showing my back end on how y'all can leverage everything that we have going on today in order to be successful. And I'm doing a meetup in Dallas this weekend. If you are part of the Bag Chasers, do not share our location. We don't want no dusties. We only want to focus on the people that's actually going in the direction that we're going in and getting this work and getting this money and networking effectively. All right. I'm going to be there. Q going to be there. And we're going to be doing it big. All right. So it's going to be absolutely awesome. Second largest bank in history, allegedly, that has ever collapsed. Let's go into it. I want to deep dive into this. Let's get to the money, ladies and gentlemen.
Breaking this morning, First Republic Bank has become the second largest bank failure in U.S. history. Regulators have seized the bank, sold off most of its assets to JP Chase in a rescue deal as America's banking crisis flares up again. In a statement this morning, JP Chase's CEO Jamie Dimon says our government invited us and others to step up, and we did. He did note this will benefit JP Chase. We'll talk a lot more about it. But look, First Republic is now the third major bank to fail since March. The announcement comes just hours before markets open, and we're keeping a close eye on Wall Street to see how it reacts when the markets open. Our business.
So let's start off right here. All right. First and foremost, banks fail all the time. The second largest bank to ever fail, now that's a feat and a caveat that you have to tip your hat to, but banks fail all the time. When banks fail, often at times another bank is the recipient of those customers. Instead of the government going over and saying, hey, we want to bail out this bank in order to continue to instill consumer confidence, what the government now apparently is doing, based off of what's being communicated here, is the government is now saying, listen, we don't want to necessarily continue to have to do this, because then you start to get into being more of a socialist environment. When you go and sign up for a bank account, when you go and get a loan, when you go and do anything, what you know and what you understand is that your deposits is guaranteed up to $250,000 per account, right? I even seen this one thing where Giannis used to have a whole bunch of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 accounts with different amounts in them, because he wanted to make sure that his money was protected against the collapsing of the economy and the banks themselves, right? But First Republic Bank, another banking collapse. We're still mining out the details, but let's continue to get into the show. Make sure y'all hit a like for the YouTube algorithm. I'm reading Super Chat shortly.
And politics correspondent Vanessa Yurkevich outside of a First Republic Bank here in New York City. Vanessa, good morning to you. What is so shocking is that 11 weeks ago, Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan led the way for all these big banks to inject $30 billion into First Republic to try to save it. And even that didn't work.
That's right, Poppy. And later this morning, when this First Republic branch behind me and 83 others around the country open, it will be under new ownership. JP Chase buying First Republic Bank in a deal overnight, announced this morning by the FDIC. This was an effort by regulators to shore up consumer confidence in the banking system. As part of this deal, JP Chase will assume all deposits of First Republic Bank. So when people go to the bank this morning, their deposits are safe.
Now, again, the government wants to ensure consumer confidence in the banks, because now it is more important than ever, because we don't necessarily make a lot of things in this country. The only thing that we do is move money around in order to ensure that we generate more revenue, because banks make money off of continuing to loan you money in order to ensure that they get paid off of the interest. So let me tell you how banks work, how they make money. I'm going to give you the short form of it. I'm going to read Super Chat shortly. Shout out to you, King Jaffe Joe. I want to give you the crash course from a student's perspective of how it is that they make money, right? Because a lot of people will ask you, and nobody really minds through how a bank can collapse. How does a bank collapse, right? How does a bank collapse? How does a bank become insolvent? Because another thing that you see people say all the time is we need black people to open up their own bank. They have, and they failed in the past. There has been majority black banks that have failed in the past. And a lot of people like to ask the question, well, how do banks make money? How do banks collapse? How do they get themselves in this position in the first place? And let me tell you how. Let me tell you why the gamification of credit, banking, deposits, the economy, how it's all tied together, and why the federal government is so dedicated to instilling confidence in the consumers in order to ensure that you continue to put your money inside of these institutions, because it's all literally one big pyramid. It's all one house of cards, because one thing without the other will not work. The way that banks largely make money is that they take your money collectively and then they substantiate exactly how much they have in deposits in order to justify how much money that they loaning out, because they just can't continue to loan out a wild amount of money. They have to be very, very careful on how it is that they use their resources in order to make more money. And so there's a few different ways in which they make money. They make money off fees, but we all know that a lot of the fees have gone away in order for banks to try to compete with each other. So back in the day, right, they used to have a fee on opening up a bank account. Now they have usually a tiered system where they say, listen, it's going to cost you, I don't know, $9 a month. Let's just use a round number. $9 a month in order for us to continue to service this bank account. Now, it costs money for them to service that bank account, right? It costs them money in the form of workers, technology, banking, locations and ATMs and transaction fees and MasterCard and Visa and all of these different things. It costs them money to have that bank account. Now, why would they give it to you for free? Why would they give it to you for free? Well, they're not, right? They would usually charge you a fee back in the day, right? They would charge you a fee for having a bank account. They would charge you a fee for bounce checks. They used to charge you a fee for overdraft fees. They would charge you a fee for a lot of different things, right? Transaction fees, issues, problems. If you use another ATM, it's a fee. But in order for them to compete with each other, they had to then lower the cost of doing business. It used to be a fee for having brokers, for doing trades, buying different stocks. It used to cost a lot of money. Now everything has been streamlined and everything is free. And technology has afforded them the ability to be able to compete. So what do they have to do? They have to generate more revenue. How do you generate more revenue? You have to give more loans. You have to find a different type of customer base. When they started opening these applications and these technology companies, they used to have only online banking. And with only online banking, one of the things that you've seen was they were going after a younger generation. Because often at times when you tie yourself to a specific brand, you're there for life. Wherever you bank, if you've never had an issue, you're usually there for life. Nobody usually just switches banks just out of the blue, right? Every year you don't have a new lease coming up and then you start to evaluate what kind of car you're about to buy. And so the way that they make money is by fees and then the interest that comes along with whatever it is that you have going on. Now, one caveat that they would say is, well, if you have direct deposit, which increases the amount of deposits that they have in the bank, which also factors into how much money that they can lend out to consumers. If you got direct deposit, if you have this amount of money in the bank and you keep this amount of money in the bank, if you open up this type of account, then we will waive these fees or we will waive this or so on and so forth, right? And so they have to compete in order to continue to steal different depositors away from other banks. But the main way in which they can make money is then they have to start loaning out the money so that you're paying interest on whatever it is that they're buying for you. So for example, when you buy a home, right? Let's say you buy a $500,000 home and you get a 30-year mortgage, that is in the best interest in the bank, especially if you're a person with high credit. High credit tells them, and it gives them the gamification to tell them and say, well, this person is more than likely 10 times out of 10 going to pay their mortgage on time forever. Now, they want you to be late occasionally, right? Because then they get the fees and the transaction fees and the late fees that go along with it. That continues to go in the bank's coffers without any kind of issue. But they still want you to pay your bills on time, and that's how they can ensure that they continue to make money. Now, riskier loans, subprime loans, when you start making large investments, I'll give you an example. One thing that I used to see when I was working at Comerica, right? When I used to work at Comerica is that we learned from a user experience perspective that banks like to mitigate risk. So let's say, for example, that somebody comes along and let's say Elon Musk comes along and Elon Musk says, you know what? I have the money to be able to buy Twitter, but I don't want to use all of my money in order to be able to buy Twitter because what happens is I then have to pay the taxes on the money that I'm drawing out from my compensation or from other things in order to then allocate $44 billion in order to buy Twitter. And see, this is how rich people use money versus how poor people use money. Poor people says credit is good so that they can buy things that they don't need in order to justify their lifestyle for people that don't care about them. Rich people leverage banks' money because they say, we don't want to pay the taxes that come along with pulling money out of my own stuff and having to pay the capital gains taxes, the payroll taxes, whatever the taxes is. So I'm going to leverage my position in this company in order to get the money in order to pay off or to pay for this new entity or this new business that I'm going in, right? And so what happens is the banks then say, well, we're not just going to give you $44 billion. We're going to partner with this bank and we're going to partner with this bank and we're going to partner with this bank. And so they want to be a part of the deal, but they want to mitigate the risk because they don't want to take on the entirety of what it takes in order to finance that deal, but they still want to make a lot of money from it and they want to be associated with it. So banks often will partner with multiple different banks. And I know this because I was in the banking industry and I studied it from a user experience perspective. Banks will partner with other banks in order to get certain deals done in order to make sure that they can, continue to make money by lending out the money that they need in order to continue to make what it is that they have coming back from them from that deal. When you see a company and it says, well, Twitter has to pay $1 billion interest payment by this date or else it's going to become insolvent, that money is going straight over to the banks, all right? So when you start to look at how banks fail, right, you have to start also looking at the identity of the people or the industry in which they're servicing or lending, right? Comerica Bank, for example, made the transition to move from Detroit in the early 90s down into Dallas because it was a huge oil industry down there and they wanted to start to tap into a lot of those customers or a lot of those businesses, and they felt like they was in a better position to be able to do so if they moved their headquarters down there while also still servicing what it is that they had over here in Detroit. Similarly, I'm having a conversation with the mayor of Detroit, the former mayor of Detroit, Kwame Kilpatrick, and Comerica Bank got pissed at them at one point because the mayor said in order for y'all to continue to do business in Detroit with the city and us to have our deposits still in this bank, you're going to have to do other things and be more of a corporate citizen for the city. And so what he did was he took $84 million out of the bank and he moved it into a different bank, and Comerica Bank got pissed at him, right? Corporate sponsorships. Comerica Park is out there and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of different moving pieces with regard to the whole banking industry. Wow, it's really raining out here. I can hear it. It's a lot of different moving pieces with regard to the banking industry that you guys have to start paying attention to. And it's a lot of risk associated with it. And banks fail all the time. So I wanted to give y'all a little bit of a cliff note of how banks make money, how they operate, how they choose what their customer base is going to be, because it factors into how it is that they're operating every single day from a business perspective. All right.
All started to unfold several weeks ago after the failure of SVB and Signature Bank. But as you mentioned, there was that big cash infusion of $30 billion led by JP Morgan. But things really started to spiral last week after the first quarter earnings call by First Republic, where they revealed that deposits fell by 40%, totaling about $100 billion. That sent stock prices falling. Just on Friday, shares were trading at about $3, down from about $122 earlier in March. We do have a statement from the Treasury Department out early this morning reacting to the news. I will read that to you. Here's what they said. Quote, Treasury is encouraged that this institution was resolved with the least cost to the Deposit Insurance Fund and in a manner that protected all depositors. The banking system remains sound and resilient.
Well, of course they're going to say that. Now, one of the benefits that comes along with tapping into Chase to say, hey, listen, and let me tell you why it makes sense for Chase to actually buy it. One of the benefits that come along with them saying that is they don't have to tap into the deposit fund in which banks pay into in order to ensure the solvency of the system had there been a collapse. Now, the other side of it is you've seen what the share price was, right? Chase see it as an example to absorb. And one of the things that banks love, they always are sitting in boardrooms and in meetings and in the executive C-suites and trying to figure out how to acquire more customers. How do we get more customers? How do we get the top tier customers? It's similar to the casino. Casinos are always trying to figure out how to get the whales. Banks are always trying to figure out how to get more customers, right? And so what they do is they tap into the general public, or they tap into their marketing team, or they tap into their executives, and they're always trying to figure out, how do we get more customers? How do we get really good depositors? How do we grow in our ability to continue to make more money or push out more loans and do things in a strategic way that's going to generate more revenue for the industry? And so I would imagine, right, that their executive leadership said, listen, look at the stock price. We can get this basically at a pittance. We can absorb their customers. We can absorb their assets. We can take into what it is that we have. Now, on the other side, you also, with a deal like this, you also have to take into consideration that they're responsible for everything that comes along with even the uninsured deposits from the bank, right? They have to instill confidence in their customer base. But if they can easily absorb a group of customers, in which it happens all the time, you just don't hear about it on public platforms. If they're easily able to absorb a group of customers, from the government's perspective, it's a win-win from everybody, because they can still say, hey, listen, you guys are still safe. We don't have to tap into the deposit insurance fund, and Chase is going to go ahead and take it over, a much bigger bank that's doing greater things.
Americans should feel confident in the safety of their deposits and the ability of the banking system to fulfill its essential function of providing credit to businesses and families. So clearly, this is an effort by the FDIC, an effort by JP Morgan Chase, and an effort by the Treasury Department to assure customers and consumers that the banking system here in the United States is in fact safe. Poppy?
It's still just stunning to see 3 big U.S. bank failures since March. Vanessa, thank you. We'll check back in with you throughout the morning. And Caitlin and Christine, I mean, the truth is the FDIC still is going to pay $13 billion here in terms of the cost of this.
Well, that's what they've forecast, actually, because we don't know what the ultimate cost will be, but they've said it could be about $13 billion.
And Christina Romans, you're obviously our chief business correspondent. What do we know about the details of how all of this happened and what it looks like, what they've agreed to?
It was just an amazing weekend. I got to tell you, I mean, this is JP Morgan taking over the assets and the deposits of this bank. And then there's going to be a loss sharing provision with the FDIC for anything that comes up that could be problematic on the bank's books. So a little bit of a sweetener from the FDIC to make sure that JP Morgan would come to the table. We know there was.
So JP Morgan basically bent over the federal government in order to make sure that they went ahead and took over all of the assets that came along with First Republic Bank. So this is what JP Morgan did. JP Morgan, all right, let me break it down from a C student's perspective. First Republic Bank is failing. The federal government get wind of it. So the federal government taps into JP Morgan Chase and they say, listen, we need you over here to go ahead and pick up this asset. And then the federal government said, for what? Why would I do that? Like, we good over here. We get money. We making it rain. We got it popping over here, so on and so forth. The federal government said, listen, we don't really want to be in banking, but we still want to make sure that we instill confidence, and we need to get this done as soon as possible because we don't want fumbling Biden to come up here and to make a statement again and trying to instill confidence in the people, and that he can't even instill confidence in the ability to get student loans forgiven, right? And so the JP Morgan said, all right, looked at the federal government as a trick, and they said, but listen, if we gonna do this, you're gonna have to shake a little bit. You're gonna have to give what it is that you got. You're gonna have to bend over a little bit. You're gonna have to bend over a bit. Can I get explicit a little bit here? We're not going to go too much into detail. So the federal government said, all right, listen, I'm going to let you hit it a little bit, but you're going to have to wear a rubber. Oh, that's basically what this $13 billion is. He said, listen, just don't hurt me. She said, just don't hurt me. I'm going to let you tap into it a little bit. Just don't hurt me. That's what the federal government is doing. He said, listen. I'm not. What's the scene that set it off? Where Jada Pinkett was like, I'm in the bind, Nate. I'm in the bind, Nate. Ain't nobody trying to hear that shit, Stony. Now you getting in or what? So the federal government is Stony. JP Morgan is Nate. And the next scene, you seen Jada Pinkett, Stony, was giving it up a little bit. Now she might have cried as she was walking home. She might have gotten a shower in the next scene and then washed herself off. You know what I'm saying? But JP Morgan seen that she was in a bind. Now, could Nate have given Stony the money? Listen, we know that we learn a little bit differently. I know they told y'all they told y'all had a learning disability in school, but that wasn't true. You just had a different way of learning. So if we adapt it over into the way that we live our lifestyle, then you will understand it a little bit. So Nate could have gave Stony the money. Now, some of y'all are simps. If Stony would have came over with her little braids and all of that, she might have got a couple of dollars out of you. But Nate is different. Nate is a businessman. She said, I'm in the bind, Nate. I can come and work for you and all of this other type of stuff. But Nate didn't see her assets the way that she valued herself. She valued herself as being a hard worker. She would do a good job working for him at his companies. Remember, she didn't say she was in a bind until, you know what I'm saying, until after she had already explained how much of a hard worker she is. She asked for an advance. She asked for, now what was Nate doing strolling around with over them scallywags out there in the alley anyway? You had Queen Latifah was on the roof drinking beer. You had Vivica Fox. She was out there trying to play gangster. She had just got fired from her job. Right? I'm breaking this down from a business perspective as far as JP Morgan, First Republic, and the federal government. What was JP Morgan around on the weekend? All of the workers is gone. Jamie Dimon, he got Biden's phone number, hanging around with the scallywags for. Because they already knew that Stony was going to need that money anyway. So when Stony came through and they said, well, listen. I want to come work for you. I need some money or whatever. He said, oh, okay, come on. You can come work for me, Stony. And she said, but I need an advance. And he said, I'm sure we could figure out a way. That's what JP Morgan told allegedly the Biden administration. And then as he walked away, as Jamie Dimon was walking away and the CEOs over there at JP Morgan Chase, she said, I'm in the bind, Nate. Oh. So her value that she pitched to Nate is much different than the value that Nate extracted from her. And you know what the funniest part about the whole part of that movie, if y'all really pay attention to it? You know what the funniest part about that whole movie? I might have to pull that up as a clip. Because a lot of y'all young and a lot of y'all have not seen Set It Off. Let me see if we can find it. The funniest part about this whole movie. You know what the funniest part about this whole movie is? Hold on. Let's see if I can get it up for y'all. Look at Nate circling. In order for y'all to truly understand this, you got to see it. Because I can't explain it the same way that the scenes is going to explain it. You know what I'm saying? The funniest part about this whole part is that once Stoney's brother or nephew or whatever got killed, she ripped the check up. Nate got that bust down for free. Just like business versus the federal government. Nate got that bust down for free because she ripped up the check because she was so in her emotions and she was frustrated that it didn't work out for her. Oh, shoot. I can't get it. All right, hold on. Let me see if I can get a better version of it. Because we might still be able to do this. Hold on. I got you, baby girl. I got you, baby girl. I'm in the bind, Nate. Now look at Nate. Nate is circling around. Kicking it with the people with the lowriders. Nate got on his slacks. His shirt is tucked in. He sees Stoney, right? He talking to this guy with the sweater on. This is First Republic Bank, okay? Nate understands that First Republic is the college that the boy is trying to go to, okay? Now, Nate is Chase, and Stoney is the federal government because she's trying to make sure that First Republic gets saved, that her nephew or her brother is getting saved. Okay, well, what are you going to do for this then? What are you going to do for this bag?
Girl, didn't he want you to come work in his car lot for him? Yes.
Look at Nate.
All he wanted.
Look at Nate. He said he sees Stoney. Hey, Stoney. Nate don't see nothing but box. He don't see nothing but box, all right?
Hey, Stoney.
Come on over here, Stoney. What you talking about?
You going over there?
Look at the federal government. Yeah, I'm going to go see what he want.
Let's see what he wants.
I'm going to see what he want. Go ahead, Stoney. This is before August Alsina. Look at Jade. Look, why is Nate hanging out and you got look at Vivica Fox hair. She got pins in her head. The whole 9 yards. This is a foreshadowing of what was going to happen in 2023, y'all. Look, single mothers.
I mean, you can make 2 G's a month on commission.
Woo!
Yeah.
Yeah, you can make that. You can make that money.
Somebody who could help you.
Nate, before I come work for you,
Yeah.
I need an advance.
You need an advance, Stoney? You need an advance. Okay, federal government.
There's a little problem that I need to fix.
I can do that. Oh, yeah, I can do that.
I could do that.
But I mean, Stoney Newsom got to give me a reason to do that.
Oh, not the shoulders, Nate. Look at the face. Look at the face and the massaging of the shoulders. Oh, Jesus. We need to start using more movie references in order to explain to y'all what's going on in society. Look at the shoulders, y'all. Look, this is what's happening with First Republic Bank, United States of America, and JP Morgan Chase. All right? I want to help y'all to understand why I'm using this clip for those of you that just arrived, all right? JP Morgan Chase is swallowing up First Republic, but they needed a little bit of an incentive from the federal government in order to ensure that this goes on.
And what would that be?
Don't ask no questions, young.
Now you know.
Look at Nate.
Let's go for a ride.
Woo! He getting in that Cadillac, sunroof back. Dig in the scene where the players lean. I'm about to watch this whole thing tonight. Look at her. Don't turn around. Come on in the car. Get on in, girl. No divider in the middle.
So when do I
And don't get in here with an attitude either.
get my advance?
Oh, I don't know. Tomorrow, maybe the day after.
Look, Nate, before I do this, I want my check.
And she asking for money. She asking for money.
Hey, whoa, look. You not getting no check from me until I'm done, you understand?
Woo! Nate said, you ain't getting no check from me until I'm done. You understand? That's what JP Morgan Chase told the federal government as it relates to First Republic. Now, I'm going to stop right here because I understand that this next scene might be a little tad bit much for the Millionaire Morning Show. So we're going to get back into our regularly scheduled program, ladies and gentlemen. But my point, let's go back into the First Republic. All right. I know we do things differently over here. All right. So we have to make sure that we break this down from a C student's perspective so you guys can make a more informed decision as to how it is or how things are playing out from a business perspective. Make sure y'all tapping into the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. Let's get back to what we was talking about.
Breaking.
Let's go back.
Problematic on the bank's books. So a little bit of a sweetener from the FDIC to make sure that JP Morgan would come to the table. We know there was an auction of this bank. So over the weekend,
Reading Super Chat shortly.
you had all these banks who were vying for pieces of First Republic, but it was pretty
maybe
clear.
PNC, JP Morgan, others.
By the end of by the end
Man,
of last
bind,
week, it
Nate.
became pretty clear that the FDIC was going to have to step in and take over this bank. It was not going to be able to stand alone.
Yeah, and I think if you're waking up this morning and you're looking at this, I was just texting with a top House Republican who deals with all of this, and he says essentially this is unfinished work from SVB weekend, from what happened with Signature Valley Bank.
Well, so
Silicon Valley Bank.
Yeah, so let's talk about what happened there, because you had this bank, First Republic, lost 41% of its deposits. $100 billion walked out of the door after SVB and Signature Bank failed. Because what happened was that showed that these banks, like First Republic, they have a lot
And I think Nate gave her a post-dated check too, but neither here nor there.
of uninsured deposits. People didn't want to be sitting there with all of their money in a bank, more than $250,000 in a bank with uninsured deposits. And so they walked out the front door and took their money to other
Hey, but hold on. Before we get into this, before we continue, I'll get into that in a minute.
banks. First Republic catered to wealthy clients on the coasts. It was known for like its $5 million jumbo mortgages.
Yeah.
So when you talk about Republicans in the House, look, nobody's crying over First Republic Bank, but you don't want chaos and turmoil to spread to the rest of the banking system as well here.
And do we think that there's going to be more chaos in the rest of the banking system as a result of this?
So I've been talking to a lot of people over the weekend, and they think you call this unfinished business. They think that what happened with the all that money that was the lifeline that went 6 weeks ago that went into
the
this
$30
bank,
billion.
Right, that.
Now, look. Let me show y'all something. This is perfect because I haven't even seen this, right? And I'm going to just blow this up really quickly just to give y'all an example of what it is that we're talking about, all right? So, this is usually what happens, okay? And I'm going to break this down for you guys really, really simple. All right. If you look at this, remember when I was telling y'all that a lot of other banks a lot of times participate? One bank alone usually does not ever by themselves take on 100% of the risk of whatever deal that they have coming in, whether it's to save another bank, whether it's financing for this particular purchase. If you look at what the financing, and this is what I want y'all to do as homework, go back and look at the financing of Twitter from Elon Musk. Did he have the money? Absolutely. Did he leverage some of his money and then he did the rest of the deal with other entities in order to ensure the purchase of this asset of Twitter? Absolutely. And so the bailout of First Republic Bank previously, right, for March was based off of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 banks. 10 banks participated in the bailout of JP Morgan, and I don't even see Chase up there. 10 banks participated in the bailing out. U.S. Bank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citibank, Morgan Stanley, right? The first part of the deal, the $5 billion, was collectively put together by 4 of the biggest banks that you know visibly. Morgan Stanley contributed another $2.5 billion by itself. Another $1 billion was put together by PNC, Truist Bank, US Bank, all of this other type of stuff. So when you see a lot of this stuff happen, or you see these bailouts, or you see this money being passed around, it's usually not by one entity by itself. There's a collection of different people that come together in order to ensure that certain things happen because they want to mitigate the amount of risk or the amount of exposure that they have to risk of a possible collapse or failure, in which it did wind up going to auction, and JP Morgan Chase wind up obviously been in the federal government over it and then getting everything as a result of it. So I just wanted to share that with y'all really quickly. But we can get back into the show.
bought it some time.
Yeah.
It calmed down market fears. It bought it some time and allowed the
Yep.
industry to be able to find a way to manage this problem. Will there be more banks? No one knows for sure. I mean,
Yep.
3 big bank failures in just a couple.
There will be, in my opinion, if I have to predict it, there will be more banks that come along that fail as a result of it.
Of months is really remarkable. But for the most part, most banks are perfectly healthy and will be able to manage this interest rate risk.
But can we talk about the FDIC report here? Because I'm obsessed with this. This is an aspect of this, talking about the root causes of here and what went down. The FDIC report basically said that because they have so many staffing shortages, that led to.
So look at these excuses. The FDIC report is saying that this happened because A, poor bank management. Translation, we don't really know what's going on, but we know that the people at the top should be held accountable for the bank collapsing. Cool. Poor bank management. Number 2, management did not fully understand the risk of crypto deposits. Remember when we first started having conversations about cryptocurrency back in the day when we were doing live streams on the Millionaire Morning Show? And one of the things that I would tell my Patreon members on a regular basis, we've never done any live streams, whether on a Patreon or anything like that, in which I've suggested or I've broken down exactly what the risks were, because I've always told people on a regular basis that the thing that you never want to do is invest in something that you don't understand. I have a video inside of the Patreon, the 8 things that I look for when I'm looking to make an investment, whether it be in a stock or a company. And you never, ever, ever invest in something that you do not fully understand. The second point is management did not fully understand the risk of crypto deposits. Staffing shortages at the FDIC. So you're telling me that the FDIC, which is the governing body that oversees what's happening at the banks, similar to what it is that we experienced in 2008 for the mortgage crisis, in which basically they had no real oversight, is then one of the determining factors for whether or not this bank was going to fail? Stop it. Stop it, man. Stop it. Come on, man.
To a part of what we've been seeing playing out with these banks.
Yeah, that Fed report on the collapse of SVB was really interesting, in part because the Fed is both the regulator and the supervisor, and basically said there were all these open
regulator and the supervisor. Oh, okay.
Red flags at Silicon Valley Bank that were not followed up on, and that management didn't understand what was going on, but also just poor bank management and oversight was not as robust as it should have been.
When I sat down with JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon just last month, I asked him about these string of bank failures. Would there be more? Here's what he said then.
This is not 2008. Okay, this is much more limited. There are only a handful.
When you see the next real recession, the next real collapse, the next real opportunity that it comes for the people that have resources and is managing risk effectively and making sure that they don't have any debt. When you see the next collapse come, hear me today, on May 1st, 2023, it is going to be much more egregious than what it is you've seen in 2008. It is going to be much more egregious. I'm not sure what's going to cause it. I'm not going to sure what's happening as a result of it. I warned you of what we seeing happening right now. What I'm telling you is that everything is cyclical and it's going to happen again. Make sure y'all tune into the webinar tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of gems that come along with it. I'm going to really blow the top off of how it is that y'all need to be spending and investing y'all money effectively. But more importantly, join the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. I prepared y'all. I prepared my bag chasers. I warned y'all. I gave y'all the game. I coached y'all. I gave y'all some insight and understanding on how it was that y'all needed to prepare yourself for what was happening right now, right here, right now, and how you can capitalize off of it. I'm telling you.
Full of banks that had this particular problem, they'll eventually be
reading
resolved
super chat
one
shortly.
way or another. And I think then people should take a deep breath. In a week or two, a lot of these banks can be reporting earnings. I think they'll probably be pretty good.
What we subsequently learned as we bring in Roger Altman, former Deputy Secretary of the Treasury and founder and senior chairman of Evercore. Roger, thank you. What we learned when those bank earnings came in is how much money fled from First Republic in the first quarter. But
so nobody cared about the profits that came along with the reporting in their not their annual report, but their quarterly reports as far as showing the profitability in the banks. The people were also more concerned with how much money was pulled out of the banks. That weighed heavily on how the market seen the valuation of those particular companies.